They called it the Century War. 100 alien empires tangled in a never-ending cycle of conquest, betrayal, and retribution. They fought across shattered planets and burning moons, over forgotten relics and crumbling honor codes. For them, it was history repeating itself, old blood debts, species-wide vengeance, trade disputes turned genocidal. Every few decades, a new coalition formed. Every few years, another empire crumbled into dust. And through it all, Earth stood silent. We weren't uninformed. No, we watched everything. Humanity had satellites embedded in council relay points, deep scan interceptors parked just outside neutral zones. We saw the battle formations, the casualty reports, the evacuation of entire planetary populations. Every report came through the Office of Stellar Affairs. Every tragedy was logged. And still, Earth refused to be drawn in. The Council tried every angle. First, diplomacy, meetings, envoys, flattering titles. Then economic pressure, denied trade licenses, restricted access to wormholes, sanctions that tried to pinch. And finally, guilt. You are part of the galactic community now, they said. It is your duty to participate in the shared burden of defense. But Earth remembered its own history too well. We'd fought our global wars. We knew what came from standing on the edge of madness. World Wars I, II, the resource conflicts, the collapse, the reunification. We'd clawed our way from blood-soaked soil into the stars, not to repeat old mistakes, but to escape them. I was stationed on Arcadia Station, one of our outer defense outposts. Positioned near the Kuiper relay, we weren't just observers. We were the first line of warning if anyone crossed into soul space. I spent my nights staring at the black beyond the stars, a silent void peppered with distant fire, sometimes real battles, sometimes just phantom signals. We logged it all. 2 decades of nothing but silence. Oh, the rest of the galaxy was on fire, but Earth, untouched. The stars around us knew better than to poke the sleeping bear. We never showed our teeth, but the threat was understood. Until the Skarathi came. No declaration. No warning. Just a gravity ripple at 314 Sol Standard, followed by a tear in local spacetime. A Skarathi battle carrier emerged, ugly, bulbous, bristling with plasma harpoons. It didn't open communications. It opened fire. Vesta Station, our mining hub near Ceres, was the first to fall. No military assets, no shielding, just families, engineers, and terraformers. They never stood a chance. The Skarathi didn't want to talk. They didn't even want a proper war. They came to raid. They took 712 civilians. Just vanished them. Loaded into containment pods, dragged into the dark. And the galaxy, silent. The same council that once begged for our help now shrugged. It's a regional matter, they said. We can't interfere. But I knew the truth. They were afraid. They didn't want to provoke the Skarathi. And deep down, maybe, they thought Earth had it coming, for refusing to bleed with them. That was the moment everything changed for me. Earth might have stayed silent, but I wouldn't. Not after what I saw. Not after what they took. They didn't study us. That was their first mistake. The Skarathi had watched from the galactic sidelines as Earth built its quiet little pocket of influence, refusing treaties, ignoring interstellar alliances, declining every request to join the war. In their minds, that made us weak. Passive. Afraid. To them, we were an easy mark. A soft species. Isolated, arrogant, and ripe for plunder. After all, who refuses to pick a side unless they're too small to matter? They saw our neutrality as cowardice. But they never read our history. They didn't know what happened when enemies knocked on Earth's door. They didn't understand that peace wasn't born from weakness. It was forged in the fires of wars so catastrophic we swore never to let them happen again. We didn't decline their war out of fear. We declined because we knew what would happen if we stepped into it. But the Skarathi didn't want us in the war. They wanted to punish us for staying out. And they chose their target like predators, one that looked easy. Vesta Station had no weapons. No warships. Just a mining ring, a population of 4,000 civilians, and some light commercial freighters. I watched the whole thing unfold from Arcadia Station. I watched the feed in silence as their ships descended, like vultures in orbit. I heard the emergency beacons scream across the void. I saw the station's hull crack, watched air and bodies vent into space. I still see it when I close my eyes. The Skarathi took their time, systematically disabling Vesta systems, targeting life support, dragging terrified civilians into their raiders' holds. They weren't efficient. They were cruel. Deliberately so. They weren't just taking resources. They were making a statement. And no one did anything. Not the Council. Not the Trade Federation. Not the other so-called peacekeeping species. Regional engagement protocols, they said. Unauthorized retaliation could escalate tensions. It was all bureaucratic cowardice wrapped in long-winded excuses. They weren't afraid of the Skarathi. They were afraid of what we would do if pushed too far. Earth's official response came 30 hours later. Condemnations. Protests. Requests for mediation. The usual. There was talk of summits. Investigations. UN Space Command postured, shuffled fleets, drafted strongly worded communiques. Meanwhile, 712 people were still missing. That number kept echoing in my head. 712. Engineers, botanists, students, children. Taken by a species that thought humanity wouldn't respond. I remember standing alone in the observation ring of Arcadia, watching the stars rotate in perfect silence. My breath fogged the glass as I pressed my forehead against it, trying to imagine what those people were going through. I didn't care about the politics. I didn't care what Earth would or wouldn't authorize. All I knew was that if we let this go unanswered, it wouldn't be the last raid. And so I made a choice. If Earth wouldn't bring the war to the Skarathi, I would. The Aegis wasn't a myth. Not to me. Every cadet at the Defense Academy had heard the whispers, stories passed in hushed tones during late-night drills or over smuggled whiskey. A warship so massive, so advanced, it had been buried before humanity ever joined the galactic stage. They said it was part of the Phoenix program, Earth's contingency for a war no one dared fight. A preemptive measure, mothballed during the reunification accords and sealed beneath Luna's crust to rust into legend. Except it never rusted. And it was never meant to be forgotten. I knew it existed because my father had served in the division that helped design its AI core. He used to say, "Son, there are ships you fly, and there are ships that fly you. The Aegis is the second kind." He never told me more than that, but after Vesta fell, I started digging through restricted files. Clearance protocols. Dark folders buried under layers of obsolete encryption. What I found made my blood go cold. The Aegis was real. Operational. Tucked into a lunar vault under Tycho crater, its systems in standby, its core reactor in sleep mode, waiting for a command code. Waiting for a reason. Vesta Station was reason enough. I didn't ask for permission. There wasn't time. Earth Command was still debating strategy when I forged clearance under my old Academy credentials, boarded a supply shuttle, and redirected it mid-flight. I touched down on Luna during a scheduled maintenance blackout. Just me, a stolen authorization sequence, and a warship the size of a small city. I'll never forget the moment the vault doors opened. The air shifted, like the moon itself was holding its breath. The lighting inside was low, sterile, humming with dormant power. I stepped across metal platforms older than I was, past walls lined with forgotten weapons, systems that didn't even exist in Earth's modern arsenal. And at the heart of it all, encased in magnetic anchors, floated the Aegis. Dark. Silent. Sleeping. I uploaded the ignition sequence and whispered the activation phrase. Protocol Nemesis. Override silence. The ship didn't come to life. It woke up. Lights flared across its hull. Systems hummed like a beast stretching after centuries of sleep. The AI booted slowly, its voice deep, metallic, but aware. / Aegis-class Dreadnought online. Captain identity, verified. Threat level, strategic. And just like that, I was no longer a watcher. I was a commander. A rogue, yes, but not alone. Before Earth could revoke my clearance, before the Council could declare me a criminal, I was already moving. The Aegis jumped from Luna's orbit under its own power, faster than any cruiser Earth had fielded in decades. Our first target, Skarathi Forward Depot Theta 19. Their nearest raiding hub. I launched the strike without warning. No transmission. No preamble. Just plasma torpedoes and orbital rail slugs screaming down from the void. The depot never had a chance. By the time Earth Command tried to recall me, 3 more Skarathi stations were ash and silence. And the galaxy realized something terrifying. Earth had finally answered. We called them the Dragons. Not officially, that would have been too poetic for Earth Command, but that's what the crews called them. Colossal warships from a forgotten era, sealed in off-grid bunkers, dry docks buried in asteroid fields, and camouflaged orbital yards around Jupiter and Saturn. Massive, scaled, and deadly. Each one was built during the Cold Silence, the years after humanity first discovered FTL, but before we joined the wider galactic stage. Back then, no one knew what was waiting in the void. So, we prepared for everything. And then, nothing came. Peace held. Alliances formed. The threat never materialized. And humanity, in its infinite caution, chose to hide its dragons rather than unleash them. Until now. When I took the Aegis rogue, I expected to be exiled. Maybe even executed. Instead, I received a message. 1 line. No signature. Just, "You've drawn the blade. Now let the rest of the sword swing." An hour later, 17 encrypted signals activated simultaneously. Dockyards went live. Dry docks lit up. AI war cores spun into motion. And from the shadows of Jupiter's rings to the dust fields of Saturn's moons, humanity's sleeping giants stirred. We weren't the only ones angry. Vesta had hit something deep in every one of us. We'd watched it in silence, restrained by politics and fear. But I'd lit the match. Now the blaze couldn't be stopped. Earth Command, forced to save face or be accused of cowardice, gave the green light, *barely star. And behind that thin layer of approval came the flood. Volunteer squadrons, special forces from Mars, even Black Ops units that hadn't existed on record in 50 years. They all wanted in. I was appointed acting admiral of Task Force Ragnarok. 7 capital-class warships. 42 cruisers. A fleet built for vengeance, not diplomacy. We didn't bother with forming alliances. We didn't send messages. We set a course for the nearest Skarathi systems, and moved like the apocalypse. The Skarathi were unprepared. They had no idea what humanity had been hiding. Their fleets were designed for terror, for intimidation, for raids and fast retreat. Ours were built for extinction. The first system we entered, Kresh NAR, was a mining hub. 3 Skarathi orbital rigs, 2 defense towers, 1 civilian hub with slaves from 6 species. We destroyed the military assets in minutes. Then, in a move that shocked even the Council observers, we docked at the civilian hub and released every prisoner. No ransom. No deals. Just one message left behind. Tell your masters, you never should have touched Earth. We moved from system to system like a storm. We didn't occupy. We didn't colonize. We struck, freed, and vanished. In 2 weeks, we'd dismantled over 20 Skarathi installations. But this wasn't conquest. It was retribution. We weren't there to take. We were there to burn. And everywhere we went, the message spread like wildfire. Humanity wasn't weak. We were waiting. Now the dragons were awake. And they were hungry. They tried to spin it as a misunderstanding. That was the Council's first reaction when the full scale of our retaliation reached their polished marble halls. To them, it was chaos. Skarathi systems going dark one after another, outposts destroyed, slave camps emptied, battle fleets routed. No warnings. No negotiations. Just fire. And for the first time in centuries, it wasn't an internal war between squabbling species. It was humanity, unified and deliberate, striking with surgical fury. The Council didn't know how to respond. They'd spent decades thinking of Earth as a neutral backwater. Technologically curious, culturally rich, but ultimately unambitious. A quiet member of the galactic community. No expansionist behavior. No colonial wars. No invasions. Then we unleashed the Aegis and the fleet behind her. And suddenly the entire balance of power shifted. I received the summons 2 days after our assault on the Skarathi munitions world of Fractal. We'd leveled their planetary foundries in under 3 hours. The planetary defense system didn't even finish booting before we disabled it. The feed went viral on over 100 networks. Not because of the destruction, but because of the precision. Because of the speed. Because no one knew we had ships that could do that. The Council couldn't ignore us anymore. Their invitation was more of a command. It didn't go to Earth Command. It came straight to me. Name, rank, identification code. They wanted me in person. At the Grand Assembly. Some said I shouldn't go, that it was a trap, a political stunt, maybe even a way to pin blame or set the stage for sanctions. But I knew better. The Council wasn't summoning a soldier. They were summoning a warning. The Grand Assembly spire was located on VLAN Prime, a golden world, floating above an ocean of clouds. The structure rose kilometers high, surrounded by 1,000 ships from every species imaginable. Security was tight, but when I arrived, there was silence. No protests. No jeering. Just eyes. Watching. Measuring. The chamber itself was massive, an echoing cathedral of power and tradition. At its center, the Assembly throne, surrounded by representatives from over 400 interstellar civilizations. And in the middle, they gave me the floor. A Grell ambassador stood first. Grayscaled, 7 feet tall, with bioluminescent patterns flickering down its arms. You were not authorized to intervene in a galactic conflict, it hissed. Your actions threaten to destabilize the region. I stared at it. Calm. Steady. And taking 700 civilians from a neutral world doesn't? A dozen species shifted uncomfortably. A few lowered their gazes. Some were Skarathi allies. Others were complicit through silence. We warned you what would happen, I continued. We asked for help. None came. The council room pulsed with tension. You could feel it in the air. Species used to power suddenly unsure if they still had it. I leaned forward, voice cold. You thought Earth would never strike back. That's your mistake. You think because we were silent, we were weak. But let me be clear. I let the words hang. Let the weight of what was coming settle in. We've only just begun. The Skarathi called for peace. Not because they were remorseful. Not because they realized what they'd done. They simply couldn't keep up. Every fleet they sent to intercept us vanished into debris fields. Every fortified station they trusted was turned into molten slag. Their supply chains were in shambles. Their leadership fractured. Their colonies on the brink of revolt. They sent envoys, cloaked in desperation, asking for ceasefires. They offered terms, return the captured, relinquish certain trade lanes, even surrender a few minor systems. To them, it was a generous offer. To us, it was insulting. There was no negotiation. No council of war. No pause. Because we hadn't come for land. We hadn't come for tribute. We came for justice. And justice demanded fire. When I rejected the Skarathi proposal, I didn't issue a counteroffer. I sent a broadcast. One signal. One voice. It went out to every listening post, relay node, and civilian channel across the known galaxy. This is Admiral Rhys Callan of Earth's Task Force Ragnarok. You don't know me. That's fine. You will remember me. You will remember this moment. I paused, watching myself through the camera feed, the stars wheeling behind me in the viewport of the Aegis. I wanted them to see my eyes. I wanted them to see that we weren't monsters. We were the mirror the galaxy refused to look into. Earth did not start this war. We asked for peace. You gave us silence. Then the Skarathi struck, and you turned away. 712 of our people were taken, tortured, experimented on like animals. And no one came. The feed was silent, but I knew they were listening. Billions of beings across thousands of systems. So now we've come to deliver our answer. Let this be clear, if you raise a hand against Earth, you will not find diplomats at your gates. You will not find sanctions. You will not find warnings. You will find us. Our ships. Our wrath. Our silence turned into fire. I leaned in, calm and cold. This is not conquest. This is reckoning. The message played on every channel for 48 hours. The Council tried to stop it. They failed. People listened. Not just humans, aliens too. Species who had suffered under the Skarathi. Refugees. Survivors. Veterans of wars the Council had refused to acknowledge. Something shifted. We started receiving strange signals. Tips. Coordinates. Inside intel. And not from our own spies, but from those who had once been our enemies, or had never dared speak. Because they saw what the Council never had the courage to believe. When humans go to war, it is never just war. It is personal. We struck deeper. Harder. We hit research labs where Earth prisoners had been dissected. We stormed Skarathi vaults filled with trophies, skulls, photographs, journals. We brought it all back. We showed it to the galaxy. And when the truth came out, when the last image of a human child locked in a Skarathi stasis cell flickered across the feeds, no one defended them anymore. No more peace talks. No more diplomacy. Only judgment. They say the galaxy forgets. That time buries everything, wars, victories, atrocities, until even the scars fade. But this would not be forgotten. Not this war. Not what humanity became. The Skarathi Empire fell within a month. Not because we wanted their territory, but because they had nothing left to defend it. Their fleets were shattered. Their homeworld abandoned by its own nobles, left to burn while escape pods clawed for the stars. We didn't pursue them past a certain line. Not because we couldn't, but because we didn't need to. We made our point. Every world we left behind bore the same symbol, seared into the ground, etched into orbital debris, broadcast into the void. A circle split in two. Peace shattered. Restored by force. The Council convened again. Emergency meetings. Sanctions. Investigations. They wanted to reassert order. But none of it mattered. The galaxy had already shifted. No one spoke over us anymore. No one lectured humanity about restraint. They watched what we did, and adjusted their tones accordingly. I returned to Earth. Not to celebrate. There were no parades. No songs. Just the silence of a planet that had seen too much and understood too well what price had been paid. The 712 names were carved into the steel of the monument wall in Geneva. I stood there alone for an hour, reading every one. I'd memorized them during the campaign. Recited them before every major strike. They weren't just victims. They were the reason we'd risen. I visited Vesta too. What was left of it? The station had been rebuilt partially, but the scars still ran deep. Blast marks, melted hull plating, long corridors sealed forever. Some areas they kept exactly as they were. As a warning. As a memory. People call me a war hero now. Some call me a butcher. I don't answer either. I'm just someone who acted when silence failed. Someone who finally pulled the veil off the illusion of unity that the galaxy had been hiding behind. Because we never wanted to rule. We never wanted dominion or tribute. All we ever asked for was respect. And when that was denied, when our people were taken and our pleas ignored, we did what no one thought we would. We showed them what humanity really is. Not conquerors. Not monsters. But something far more dangerous. We are the fire you pray never awakens. We are the storm that remembers every injustice. We are the species that forged peace through restraint, and war through necessity. Now, the galaxy remembers. Trade routes rerouted around our systems. Fleets give us a wider berth. Council resolutions include us whether we attend or not. And on 1,000 worlds, children grow up hearing one new bedtime warning. Never cross the humans. They burn brighter than suns. And they never forget.